How did a Hellboy comic without Hellboy last longer than the actual Hellboy comic? Let's get right back into BPRD. As always, the transcript for this essay and all of my videos can be found on my website, witsendpod.com. I won't be summarizing everything with each of these BPRD episodes, so anyone who is curious can check out the first episode that summarizes what BPRD is. The frogs are rapidly multiplying across the world after the Plague of Frogs arc. After the chaos of Plague of Frogs, the Dead arc is a slower character and world-building story. It also sees the introduction of writer John Arcudi's time on the series. Arcudi worked on the original Mask comics during his time at Dark Horse. His involvement revitalizes the tone of the series, giving it more humanity. Everyone's personalities become more layered. In a 2008 interview, Arcudi talked about his writing process and collaborating with Mike Mignola. Quote, "Sometimes Mike hands me a plot and I work from that. Sometimes I tell Mike my plot and he adds things. Sometimes Mike writes his part and I write my part. It just depends on what the series needs to be. Sounds stupid, but hey, it's working so far." As the main BPRD artist, Guy Davis starts taking a more active role in designing the visual world from here on out. Davis would also bring the world to life by looking at Mignola's handwritten scripts and through phone conversations with John Arcudi. On top of the monster and villain designs, Davis designs the new BPRD headquarters in the Dead arc. First appearing in Hellboy, the original Fairfield, Connecticut base was a pretty nondescript office building. The Bureau moves to Colorado to better handle the frog plague. Davis wanted to make it look like a submarine tower embedded in the side of a mountain. It's like a militaristic sci-fi haunted mansion. The Dead sees Abe Sapien temporarily leaving the BPRD to investigate his past. He learns his name was Langdon Caul, and that his old mansion is still in Rhode Island. Another realization Abe has is the spirit of Elihu Cavendish, who possessed his body to kill Rasputin in Seed of Destruction, was Langdon Caul's old ship captain. Everything is connected. Even still, BPRD is accessible without Hellboy. For any of the flashbacks to the Hellboy stories, Davis switches to Mignola's style. Davis has mentioned that he wasn't asked to draw like Mignola for BPRD, which is for the best and lets Davis bring his flavor of storytelling into the world. On revisiting his old house, Abe reunites with the spirit of his wife Edith. Abe needs to make peace with his past and accept who he is. He doesn't even go back into the field with the BPRD for a couple arcs, and is still dealing with the weight of Hellboy's absence. Fearing that Abe won't return, BPRD director Tom Manning brings in a new member to lead the team without telling anyone, in what is one of the best character introductions in the series, with Captain Ben Daimio. He's a Japanese-American former Green Beret who was taken down in action, and was actually considered dead for 3 days and has the scars to prove it. Liz Sherman, not being enthused by Manning's decision to pick a new leader, starts calling Daimio Captain Zombie. Daimio is a brash, cigar-chomping Nick Fury type, ready to do whatever it takes to win the fight against the frogs. He immediately shakes up the already established dynamic of the Bureau members and butts heads with everyone. Under his command, the Bureau becomes a shoot-first, ask-questions-later outfit. Daimyo is initially put off by Roger, but gets used to him. Arcudi has talked about how for this arc he wrote all the Daimyo, Roger, and Bureau scenes while Mignola told the Abe story. The differences in tone are pretty apparent, and Abe's plot does lean into the same gothic roots as Hellboy. Davis makes the two story types feel more uniform with his art. While Hellboy leans into Lovecraftian horror, mythology, and pulpy roots, BPRD feels more contemporary while using the monster elements. BPRD leans into its challenges of the unknown roots and gives them newer uniforms. As the Frogs arc ramps up, the Bureau becomes more militaristic. It's revealed that the ghosts of German scientists have taken over Johann Kraus's body and are using him to build a weapon to vaporize a former Nazi scientist who has been hiding in the new Bureau base since the 50s. The scientist named Gunther wants to open up a portal in the lowest level of the base to let in some otherworldly creatures. Using Johann, the German scientists vaporize Gunther before that can happen. Like Plague of Frogs, this story is a way to bring all the new elements together and establish the new status quo. Even when the arc isn't about frogs, they really aren't ever forgotten. Speaking of frogs, John Arcudi handles most of the writing for the War on Frogs arc. This arc is fast-paced. Each issue focuses on a different Bureau member in their fight against the frogs, so Arcudi gets to show subtle character building moments while pushing the frog story forward. The first issue opens up with the entire team underground going after a nest of frogs. A frog they're chasing leads the Bureau into a trap where they're ambushed by a swarm of frogs. War develops the frogs and shows they aren't mindless. Later issues in this arc reveal the frogs have their own culture, language, and a belief in the afterlife. The most eerie part of this first issue is when the Bureau realizes the frogs have nests underground. They find giant frogs that are carrying tadpoles. Liz's arc of coming to terms with her powers continues and she decides to burn the nest. Unfortunately, a few of the tadpoles escape. The Bureau isn't the only organization going after the frogs. A guy in a hazmat suit with a Zinco box picks up the surviving tadpoles and walks off into the dark. War on Frogs has stories by veteran artists Herb Trimpe and John Severin. Herb Trimpe is no stranger to big green monsters, so his issue is a smackdown between Roger and the Cavendish brothers, who were two of the first frogs Hellboy fought in his first story. It feels a lot like the early Hellboy stories, with the internal narration. During the fight, Roger learns the Cavendish brothers only wanted to bury their mother. After the fight, Roger buries them together, while questioning his own motivations of killing frogs. John Severin's issue is like if an EC war comic had a baby with Lovecraft. It doesn't even focus on the main team, but is a highlight of the series so far. It makes one frog seem like a big threat. Daimio's issue wraps up a loose end from Plague of Frogs. It's revealed that the frog girl who tried to kill Roger has been traveling around the world with a cult, trying to heal people, but she's turning them into frogs. Johann's issue has art by Peter Snyberg. For a ghost character like Johann, the art style works really well. It builds on the frogs and reveals that they have ghosts, but no afterlife. Johann is forced to help them find somewhere to go after death. This issue gives a look into how the frogs communicate and their language and beliefs. Johann does help them to their afterlife, but ends up almost being consumed by this big black hole tentacle monster in the sky himself. No good deed, as they say. The Black Flame is the longest arc so far, with 6 issues. The big bad is trying to bring about the end of the world by controlling the frogs himself. There's a callback to War on Frogs #1, where a Zinco employee scoops up the tadpoles left by the Bureau. It's a little detail where it's mentioned that they were found 4 months ago, and it was actually 4 issues ago. Issue #1 wastes no time revealing that Zinco CEO Landis Pope is a Nazi sympathizer. That's most Hellboy villains, either Nazis, demons, or monsters. Zinco and Pope were established back in Mignola's Wake the Devil as supporters of Rasputin. Zinco is an all-purpose evil corporation with Nazi ties. Pope takes up the mantle of Black Flame, who is a Doctor Doom Red Skull mashup fueled by corporate greed and a god complex. Through Zinco's experiments, Pope has learned how to control the frogs. He fires everyone at his company and focuses entirely on spreading the plague. Roger continues to struggle with his humanity or lack thereof. He's respected by the Bureau soldiers he leads, but he doesn't actually feel human. There's something somber about his scenes. He's gunning down frogs and he's efficient at doing it, but he knows this isn't his purpose. That said, he doesn't know what his purpose is. Roger's story is a really abridged version of Hellboy's. He was treated more like a weapon. It's that Hellboy got to live long enough to decide he didn't want to live for the Bureau. Roger woke up after 500 years and was forced into it immediately. The creative team was building up Roger because during this arc, he meets his death at the hands of the Black Flame. It's so abrupt and doesn't even give readers time to process. All of Roger's siblings are impacted by his death, including Daimio, who even tries to resign from the Bureau, but is stopped by Tom Manning. Roger was like a brother to Liz, since her flame brought him to life. It's Roger's death that pushes Abe back into the field with the Bureau. He feels responsible for Roger's death, feeling he should have been there to protect him. Black Flame summons Katha-Hem to Earth, but is quickly revealed that he was a pawn, not the master. Flame is quickly chained up by the frogs like Mad Max in Fury Road as Katha-Hem lays waste to Lincoln, Nebraska. Liz continues to learn more about her powers. Her story during this arc is about dealing with nightmares regarding her powers, and learning that she has a bigger role in the fight against the frogs. When she comes to terms with her nightmares, she's able to destroy Katha-Hem with a mix of her fire and cosmic energy. After the battle, a dejected Black Flame scolds himself for controlling the frogs and bringing Katha-Hem to Earth. The fight welded his suit shut so he can't even get out of it. He approaches Liz and reveals he killed Roger. Before she can get revenge, Black Flame is abruptly dragged underground by an army of frogs as he screams for forgiveness. There's really no follow-up about how a giant Lovecraftian tree trunk with legs, tentacles, and hundreds of eyes invaded Earth. Back at the Colorado base, Johann confronts the Bureau scientists about their treatment of Roger's body. Johann says they should treat Roger like a person because he was one. They wanted to throw what was left of him in the trash on orders from director Manning. Keep in mind, Manning planting a bomb in Roger was the reason Hellboy left the Bureau in the first place. This issue ends with Johann sensing that Roger's spirit is still alive. These stories move fast and don't spoon-feed readers. They go from these massive cosmic stories to small-scale character-building moments, allowing readers to infer the moments between the panels for themselves. As always, the transcript for this essay and all of my videos are available on my website, witsendpod.com. If it's not on there, it's not me. There's going to be a playlist for my B.P.R.D. and Hellboy work on my channel. Share these essays around. Thanks for watching. Chaos ensues.